We begin, though, in the Middle East, where the president of the United States is in Qatar for the next leg of his three-country tour. He started, of course, in Saudi Arabia and will next head to the United Arab Emirates. Before he left Doha, though, he met with Syria's new president. Now, this comes, of course, on the heels of announcing yesterday that the U.S. would be lifting sanctions on that country. President Trump vowed U.S. support as Syria tries to rebuild after years of war and regime change. He also urged Syria to recognize Israel's statehood. CBS News Chief White House correspondent Nancy Cordis is joining us live right now from Doha. Good to see you, Nancy. So what more can you tell us about this meeting between President Trump and Syrian President Ahmed al-Sharar?
Well, it was arranged by the Saudis, and there was a big question mark, Vlad, whether this meeting would even take place. After all, this new president of Syria is someone who the U.S. once viewed as being the head of a terrorist group. He had pledged his allegiance to Al-Qaeda in the past. So they had some deep concerns, but he is also viewed as an improvement over the former leader of Syria, the leader that his group pushed out, the dictator Bashar al-Assad. And so the president was willing to go into that meeting at the urging of the Saudis and others here in the Middle East who are really hoping that this new chapter for Syria works out and makes things safer for everyone in the region. And so they had that meeting. The president said that it is time for Syria to shine. He urged the new president of Syria to sign the Abraham Accords, normalizing relations with Israel. And in this surprise move, he lifted sanctions that had been in place for such a long time on Syria, another sign of the hope that this White House has and that Middle Eastern leaders have that perhaps this will be a stable new alternative to the prior regime.
Nancy, just so you know, we're just showing some live pictures coming in to us of the President of the United States who is participating in a signing ceremony that is happening right now in Qatar. I don't know, it was sort of like yesterday we saw him signing documents with the Crown Prince in Saudi Arabia. Weren't exactly sure what those documents were. It's not clear unless you have some insight as to what the President is signing at the moment.
The only insight I have, Vlad, is that it's likely some kind of investment deal that he is signing there with the Emir of Qatar. And it's not surprising that we don't have many details. We tend to get more information about these signings after they take place. But if yesterday is any indication, the president's main goal while he is here in the Middle East is to drum up new investment for the U.S. And so it's likely that this deal he's signing right now has something to do with that. The man he's sitting with, the Emir, is someone with whom he shares a very close relationship. This is someone who came to visit him at Mar-a-Lago last September before Trump was even elected president for a second time. And it is that man sitting right next to him who is the one who offered Trump a $400 million gift, a 747 that we've all been talking about so much over the last couple of days for use as Air Force One. It's generated a lot of controversy back in Washington from Democrats and many Republicans who feel that it would be not only unseemly to accept a gift of this size from a foreign country, but in particular a gift from the nation of Qatar, which obviously is oil-rich, gas-rich, has very deep pockets, but at the same time has ties to Hamas, Hezbollah, and Iran. And they think that the White House should proceed with caution.
Yeah, that's an excellent point. I want to talk about that, Nancy. But I've always wanted to say this, Nancy. This just in from our producer, our executive producer, Eric Berlin, who tells me that the agreement that the president is signing along there with the defense secretary has to do with defense cooperation between Qatar and the United States. So in addition to perhaps some of those economic agreements that he's going to be signing, this first document seems to be around this idea of defense cooperation between the two. But as you say, there are real concerns about the government of Qatar, though somewhat of an ally to the United States. This notion that they fund terrorism in funding and backing Hamas, Hezbollah, and working very, very closely with Iran is something that is concerning in a bipartisan fashion, I must say, which is rare these days in Washington.
Yeah, and it's a really tricky relationship because despite those concerns, even President Biden declared Qatar an ally because we have a major airbase in Qatar. It's a launching point for operations in Iraq and elsewhere, and it's very important to the United States. In fact, President Trump is going to be visiting it tomorrow. And even before this deal that was signed, which Eric so helpfully tells us has to do with defense cooperation, the U.S. had already agreed to sell weaponry to Qatar. Let's listen in to what the president has to say.
It's going to work out. I think it's going to work. It's got to work out one way or the other. We know it's going to work out. But you were of great help, and other things. But in particular, trade. The trade is the. Kelly's telling me from Boeing, it's the largest order of jets in the history of Boeing. That's pretty good. And that's 140. Was that a 140 or 160? Well, yeah, but you're right. It's actually 200, including the 40. So it's over $200 billion. But 160 in terms of the jets. That's fantastic. So that's a record, Kelly. And congratulations to Boeing. Get those planes out there. Get them out there. But I just want to thank you. We've been friends for a long time, long before politics. Well, for you it was politics. For me it wasn't, right? But we've been friends for a long time, and this is an outstanding man. He's a great man, and we're going to help each other. The United States is in a very strong position militarily. We have the best equipment anywhere in the world. You're buying a lot of that equipment, actually, and I think we're going to see some of it in action tomorrow at the, we won't call it an air fair, but it's going to be sort of an air fair. We're going to be shown a display that's going to be incredible. They have the latest and the greatest of our planes and just about everything else. So I think it's going to be a lot of fun and very interesting. But I just want to thank you for the friendship, for the long-time friendship. And again, long before any of this stuff, we just liked each other. That's not a bad thing. That's a good thing. But we always had a very special relationship. And we came from Saudi Arabia, where we have another great man over there.
All right. You just heard there, Nancy, the President of the United States, there speaking with the Emir of Qatar. One thing that I also, Nancy, in addition to commenting on the plane that the government of Qatar is offering the President, the President yesterday in delivering remarks in the region, you probably know the quote better than I do, that diplomacy, the notion that a U.S. President generally does not criticize other presidents, let alone other American citizens when they're traveling abroad. Yesterday, the president, in delivering formal remarks, suggested that the President Biden was incompetent, that there was an incompetency over the last 4 years. I wonder if anybody's been asked about that from the administration as to why the president would do something like that while abroad.
I don't think President Trump or his aides have been asked about it yet. It's not surprising, perhaps, for Trump, but it is surprising for a president of the United States to make comments like that once they leave U.S. airspace. Typically, partisan differences tend to get left at the water's edge, and we like to present a unified front when American politicians are abroad. So again, not unusual for Trump to talk this way, but when a U.S. president is abroad, absolutely. Saying that your predecessor was incompetent, telling Gulf state leaders that he didn't do anything, that he had the wrong allegiances in the Middle East, those kinds of things are historically quite unusual for a president of the United States.
Yeah. Nancy Cordis, always great to have you, my friend. Thank you very much. Stay cool. I know it's pretty